You really making this claim as if the world is not structured masculinity over femininity, men over women? Do I need stats to prove this?
Yes.
Politically, socially, economically, women are at the bottom of the hierarchy. I think this would suffice as men being oppressors.
Yes, King, yes. Defend our honor, even though the reality of the world that we live in is not one of which the black woman was ever under the control of the black man. But if you want to go from a fact perspective, we can do that as well. Most people who die in wars are men. Most people who are homeless are men. Most people who are in jail are men. The people that do worse in school are men. The people that have the worst or the most dangerous jobs are men. The most people who die or are injured at their jobs are men. All right, guys, y'all looking at the thumbnail, y'all looking at the title of the video, y'all already know what time it is. It is time to get active. Guys, I've talked about this before, and the idea that one of the most prevalent things that upsets me when I record these videos is watching a young, indoctrinated, soy-filled young man that probably went to a college institution and took a gender studies course and now outwardly depicts his words in a way to show anger towards men for being misogynistic and oppressive in this totalitarian patriarchy of a society in regards to women. I find a young man that's espouting all of this ish, so we must get active. Without further ado.
Hey, lady, so is there any statistical proof you can give me that women have it worse than men? And
then I'm not done with you either, fam. You really making this claim as if the world is not structured masculinity over femininity, men over women? Do I need stats to prove this?
Yes.
Politically, socially, economically, women are at the bottom of the hierarchy. I think this would suffice as men being oppressors.
So the narrative in and of itself is wrong because it's telling women that they are at a disadvantage right from the get-go. And that simply isn't true. If anything, it's a woman's world. We're advantaged as females. You did that. We have more women on college campuses than men. We have more female breadwinners today than ever before, but also a huge rise in single motherhood. So at the rise of the so-called rise of women has come at a tremendous cost. And that is what is not allowed to be acknowledged.
The young brother in the beginning of the video literally said, can you provide any statistics? And then you said, do I need stats in order to prove this? Yes, you do need stats. When has ever, especially as a man as yourself, you're in the black community, when has ever the black woman been under the rule and the oppression of the black man? When has that ever happened? It's tough to see these young men philosophers indoctrinated into these young women talking points so readily without the proper guidance, the proper tutelage, and they just espout these things off. And, you know, I think low key they do it in order to get butt at the end of the day. And you see all the women that's down into their comments saying, yes, King, yes, defend our honor, even though the reality of the world that we live in is not one of which the black woman was ever under the control of the black man. But if you want to go from a fact perspective, we can do that as well. Most people who die in wars are men. Most people who are homeless are men. Most people who are in jail are men. The people that do worse in school are men. The people that have the worst or the most dangerous jobs are men. The most people who die or are injured at their jobs are men. Those that suffer from the most violent crimes are men. And these are all facts. These are all stats that you could look up on yourself in order to be able to answer the question. But saying such blanketed statements without context that women are not represented from a political, from an economic perspective is in fact very dangerous because the context here absolutely matters. But let's keep going.
That stat you made about college is saying that men are only 38% of college students. You recognize that most of the deans and the school presidents and the provosts are men.
But is it that more men are being hired for these jobs because women are being shut out, or are more men applying for these jobs and because of that, more men are being hired?
If you hire a plumber who's likely to be male, it's not because there's roving bands of tyrannical plumbers forcing you to make that choice. And it's the case with almost every interaction that you have at the face of our culture. You're dealing with people who are offering a service of one form or another, who are usually part of the broad middle class, and who offer And what you're looking for is the person who can offer the best service, and you can find it. It's not a consequence of being dominated by anything that's tyrannical.
It's okay to think that we are different, and then because of the different chemicals that fire in our brain, we look for different avenues for employment. Most women want to stay home and take care of the kids, irrespective of the career woman independent bullshit that our society wants to place on them today. But if you sat down and had a focus group with modern day women and asked 10 of them how many would rather be at home taking care of their child, I would guess it'd be about 8 out of 10.
Most women choose to work once they have children, once they're married and have children, choose to work either part-time or not at all when children are home in their home, like between birth and 18.
But if you sat down and you talked to men regarding the same shit, I'd argue maybe 2 out of 10. That's not facts, that's just opinion, but I'd love to be able to run statistics on a population in order to prove that hypothesis. Let's move on.
How crazy domination of women are. Even though we can recognize that women are going to college at higher rates, we see that men are getting these positions of power for having said credentials. 3 out of 10 college presidents are women. Keeping it real, the way you ask your question show me your mind is already made up, which means you on some gaslighting shit when you ask women this question, because you gonna deny all of the evidence they give you anyway. Textbook misogyny, man. That's what you got going on right here. Textbook. Calling women.
Just asking the question of proving the statistics is now called misogynistic. This is where our young men are today. It's really just sad to be able to see it like this on TikTok or whatever the social media platform is, as readily as what it is. That's what's called misogynistic. That's oppressing women, asking questions, having a conversation regarding this. And all of a sudden we're weaponized into hating women, to oppressing women, to not liking women. Don't you understand how damaging that rhetoric is? Like, we can't come to the table and just have a conversation regarding this shit, right? This is such a terrible and ridiculous thing to not only teach young people today, but to demonstrate who you are as a man and to hold yourself to that particular standard. But let's keep going.
Education is elevation, and I'm about to explain why calling a woman a female is problematic. First, let's get into the dictionary definition of female, which we have 2 of them. One is an adjective and the other one is a noun. The adjective is denoting the sex that can bear offspring or produce eggs. Women are more than their reproductive organs. Also, trans women do exist. Now, one of the reasons why we never refer to men or a...
Yeah, trans women exist, but they're not biological females. Where are we going with this?
Man as a male, because we know that men are more than our reproductive organ. But for some reason, we like to reduce women to just being their organs. Not to mention all women don't have ovaries because trans women exist. And then look at the example the definition uses. A herd of female deer. Which brings me to the second definition of noun. It's literally a female plant or animal, showing you that female is a dehumanizing term that's usually talking about animals and plants. Now think about the coded language of this, right? They say a female dog is referred to as the B word, correct? A lot of us will subconsciously throw the female word around very rapidly because we want to call women the B words.
God damn it. What college does this young man go to? That whole gender studies program should be nuked into the goddamn ground. It should be nuked into the ground. I don't mean this. Hold on. Let me put a public service announcement, metaphorically speaking. Okay. Not actually. Jesus. I don't want to get canceled. Anyway, the interesting thing about this conversation right here is that no one calls a female dog a bitch anymore. That's of yesteryear. So it's difficult to try to make that association in an educated man's young mind, to kind of conjoin the two, to like try to say that there's some Illuminati that's trying to create some shit against women and they're doing it for bitch to female, and then female to look in the dictionary and look, it's a plant or an animal, therefore men are calling women bitches. It's a goddamn stretch. I'm from New York originally. I grew up saying female. I grew up saying female because it's just the word that was taught to me at the time. I've come to know after that you can use female as an adjective to more readily describe the type of woman. For example, you can say female barber, right? You could say female construction worker, and that is particularly fine. Now, I typically don't refer to women as just females off of the strength of understanding that it bothers so many educated women that went to college and got fed all this bullshit. So I do it from my own perspective, not to anticipate any arguments or bullshit that can go on, because I've had women say this goddamn argument to me as well. So for posterity's sake, I just eliminate the word unless I'm using it as an adjective. So this one's an interesting one for me because I don't agree with what they're saying, but as a man that has worked in corporate America and understanding kind of the climate of using words like that, I acquiesce and choose not to use it in that particular fashion because of the climate of the bullshit today and how you can get caught up. I tell you guys all day, how you conduct yourself or move in a room or build relationship with people will determine your outcomes into the future. And sometimes you have to understand the climates and then make decisions based off of that for the betterment of yourself. But let's keep it rocking.
Are you single or you married?
Oh, what up,
I'm in a
Kevin?
relationship.
So you're single or you married?
Single, I guess, yeah. Single.
Okay, any children?
No.
You want to be married?
Why would y'all call in the Kevin show with a bonnet on? So you're calling into a show that has tens of thousands of people watching, and that's what you choose to put on?
How long you been in a relationship?
We've been official for 4 years.
Okay. What's the hold up on marriage?
What's the rush?
Common sense.
Are you married?
And you want to do it with me?
I'm just saying, are you married?
Okay, see, here's what we're about to do.
I'm just-
Here's what we're about to do right here. No. Here's what we're about to do.
No, because you wanna tell women.
Oh, see, you get these bonnet fools in these 4-year dead-end relationships
She mad.
who get mad because ain't nobody gonna marry them.
You know, and a lot of it actually does come down to that. 4 years of relationship, I think asking when are you going to get married is actually a pretty interesting question to be able to ask. But, in getting married is a benefit for the woman more often than not. Why? Because women date up. Men date down. A woman who gets a man to get on bended knee and to risk his financial future on the strength of building a family with you is a win for you. But you're calling into a relationship show with a man that talks about women getting into marriage, and he asks you a marriage question, and then you catch an attitude. Whatever happened to respect? Far too often I see people talk shit about Kevin and about the way that he talks to people, but why does no one call out women for talking to him the exact same way, if not worse?
And that class was a textbook example of what I call plantation politics, or what Bell Hooks called plantation patriarchy. She says,
What?
This testimony shows that enslaved black males were socialized by white folks to believe they should endeavor to become patriarchs by seeking to attain the freedom to provide and protect for black women to be benevolent patriarchs. She goes on to say, benevolent patriarchs exercise their power without using force, and it's this notion of patriarchy that educated black men coming from slavery into freedom sought to mimic. However, when slavery ended, these black men often used violence to dominate black women, which was a reputation of strategies to control white slave masters used. Some newly freed men would take their wives into the barn and beat them as their white owners had done. Clearly, by the time slavery ended, patriarchal masculinity had become accepted idea for most black men, and an idea would be enforced throughout the 20th century. He can ask questions in any way, shape, form, or fashion, how he pleases, but that one better not ask him the same questions, because you better not go there with him.
Did you just use an example of black men understanding that they want to be patriarchs, but then utilizing what they were born into and what they saw the white slave masters doing and having that thought passed down and what they did right after becoming slaves as an example to compare why her asking in that negative, nasty tone regarding him and currently being married in that insidious way as the same thing? A lot of these conversations that happen down in here are not even just specific to men speaking to women or having an opinion or critiquing women, but it's also, young men like this right here. That was a stretch like I have not ever seen a stretch before, young man.
And he called her a bonnet fool. What type of anti-blackness is that right there? When I talk about my black male counterparts engaging in what I call plantation politics and what Bell Hooks calls plantation patriarchy, I'm talking specifically about how she said they wanted black women to conform to the gender norms set by white society. They wanted to be recognized as men, as patriarchs by other men, including white men. Yet they could not assume this position if black women were not willing to conform to the prevailing sexist gender norms. Many black women who endured white supremacist patriarchal domination during slavery did not want to be dominated by black men after all the shit that happened. So what we see is a lot of us have internalized the politics from the plantation, and you think being a high quality man meaning you're above a black woman, meaning they gotta conform to you. And then I ask you no questions either. And I keep it a stack. Perhaps there are moments where I'm too lost in the sauce of plantation politics. But education is elevation, and I'm moving to unlearn that shit. Mr. Samuels was old enough to be my dad, and sometimes he handles himself in these conversations like a high school boy that's looking to just throw around their masculinity.
Okay, I've had enough of you. Remove race out of it and look at their behavior. That's what we do on this channel over here. We look at the behavior irrespective of all of the intangibles that go into that and the history and this and that. Let's fix right now. Let's stop complaining about it. Let's go get therapy and let's fix it. Obviously, when you look at the marriage rate, especially within the black community, there was a goddamn problem. And I think just continuing to act like men are completely at fault or it's all men's fault not only demonstrates a portion of the argument that has gotten us nowhere, but also a portion of the argument that continues to keep us behind. Questions, comments, concerns? Y'all already know what to do. Mediocre tourismreviews@gmail.com. All right, guys, you agree with the things that I'm saying in this video? You disagree? Let's light up the comments for this one. Make sure you put your timestamp down in there so I can see exactly which component of the argument that you are talking about. All right, this one should provide for fantastic conversation. Last but not least, if you guys want to join my inner sanctum, my inner community, link down below. That's my Patreon. Click the link down up in there, and I'll see you guys soon. All right, until next time, YouTube. Peace!